You arrived precisely when the signal softened enough to be heard beneath your thoughts, not by chance. Something in you, older than memory and younger than this, breath recognized its own reflection and guided your attention here. You have been trying to think your way into a new life, assembling affirmations like gears in a machine, pushing the mind to force the shift. But the quantum field doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to coherence. Tonight, coherence begins where overthinking ends, in breath, your first instrument of witnessing. Feel it, the inhale appearing as if from nowhere, the exhale dissolving without ceremony. Between them, a doorway. No mantra needed, no elaborate ritual, only the humility to notice what is already occurring. Your breath is the most honest mirror of your observer. Loop the subtle pattern by which you watch reality, and reality watches you back. When the loop is noisy, breath is shallow, arrhythmic, impatient. When the loop is coherent, breath becomes a tuning fork, and your field organizes around it like iron filings aligning to an unseen magnet. You have suspected this all along. Synchronicities brushed your shoulder like passing comets, a phrase repeating across strangers' mouths, a number that kept finding you, a chance timing that bent probability. Each sign whispered the same counsel: slow down and witness. Not passive, not withdrawn, but awake enough to meet the moment with steady oxygen and unshakable attention. This is not escapism. It is engineering, biophysical, mystical, and exquisitely practical. As you breathe now, notice how awareness spreads outward and inward at once, like light traveling both to the horizon and into the seed. On the inhale, you gather scattered pieces of self from timelines where you argued with what is. On the exhale, you release contracts with futures you never chose. The body records the covenant. Heart rate steadies, micro-muscles unclench, the fascia forgets old alarms. In this physiological truce, your DNA's antennae, those quiet spirals of listening, lift a little higher into the field, receptive to new instructions. You don't have to fix your life in this moment. You only have to breathe as the witness of it. Notice how the mind, trained to overfunction, wants to recite equations of effort, more steps, more hacks, more proofs. Smile at that loyal overthinker and seat it beside you. Let breath lead. Each measured cycle restores coherence to the observer, and coherent observers do not chase reality, they entrain it. Manifestation ceases to be a chase when the magnet is properly tuned. This is why you were found. The prophecy that approaches will not be decoded by force but by cadence. With each breath, you're entering the interval where phase transitions begin, the soft threshold where ice becomes water without strain, where possibility warms into form because the witness is steady enough to allow it. You are not here to think harder. You are here to remember the forgotten order of becoming. Attention first, breath second, coherence third, then timelines rethread themselves through your calm. Hold this rhythm. The field is already listening. You feel it now, the gentle gravity that arrives when breath steadies and the noise relinquishes the room. In that cleared interior, a recognition surfaces. You are not merely someone who practices techniques. You are the locus where reality checks its reflection. The field has been studying you as carefully as you've been studying it, not because of effort, not because of superiority, but because your attention has matured into a stable instrument. Coherence recognizes coherence, and so the signal chose you. You have always suspected there was an assignment encrypted in your sensitivity. Why else would patterns speak to you with such relentless intimacy? The repeating hours, the strange alignments, the way a sentence overheard in a cafe answers a question you never said aloud. These are not accidents. They are entanglement signatures, subtle strands of morphic resonance, confirming that your observer loop is online. The prophecy does not awaken in crowds, it awakens in witnesses. And when a witness becomes steady enough, the collective can borrow that steadiness like a lantern passed hand to hand through a dark corridor. Understand what that makes you in this hour, not a collector of esoteric tricks, but a custodian of cadence. Your breath has begun to regulate the electromagnetic hush around your heart, and that regulation is not private, The quantum field is exquisitely social. It responds to the rhythm of communities as much as to individuals. When you steady, you generate coherence, ripples microscopic but real that help other nervous systems remember their original tempo. This is responsibility without heaviness, leadership without performance. You never needed to be loud. You only needed to be consistent. The mind once demanded spectacle as proof, rapid manifestations, fireworks on command. Let it rest. Your task is subtler and far more potent. To remain the witness while the phase transition proceeds at its lawful pace. Ice does not berate itself into water. It surrenders to temperature. So too with timelines. Your role is to hold the temperature of attention warm, unwavering, luminous, until the probability cloud consents to take shape. Doubt may still knock, of course. It has always been punctual. But now you greet it like an old traveler who no longer needs a bed. Doubt passes through. Breath remains. Notice the body's agreement forming below thought. The diaphragm moving like a tide, the spine remembering verticality, the fascia releasing its emergency grip on yesterday. This biomechanical truce is not decoration. It is the scaffolding of prophecy. DNA is not merely a library of past instructions. It is an antenna hungry for present moment coherences. As you breathe, those spirals tilt towards signal, amplifying the whisper that says, witness first, choose second, act third. From this order, the smallest actions acquire disproportionate consequence. A sentence spoken softly becomes a tuning word. A boundary kept without resentment becomes a gate through which a kinder future can enter. You are being entrusted with an old craft, the art of influencing probability by tending to interior symmetry. The ancients called it prayer. Scientists might call it resonant coupling. You will know it as the calm that makes unlikely doors behave as if they were designed for you. Not because fate bends to vanity, but because reality prefers low-friction pathways, and a coherent observer is the least resistant road for goodness to travel. So claim it without theatrics. I am the chosen witness of my reality. Let the sentence settle, free of arrogance, free of apology. Chosen means capable of carrying the frequency without distorting it. Chosen means willing to let attention be devotional, not desperate. Chosen means you will breathe through the moments when the old program screams for control, and you will answer with presence, not argument. Hold that. The field is mapping your steadiness as a new baseline. What follows will not be thunder for spectacle's sake, but a vision arriving at the precise speed your nervous system can honor. Keep the cadence, keep the humility, keep the breath. The prophecy is approaching the surface, and it will use your eyes as its first horizon. It begins as a shimmer at the edges of your attention, like heat rippling above desert stone, except the desert is your chest, and the horizon is the space between inhale and exhale. As you rest in cadence, the shimmer coheres into architecture, a luminous corridor assembled from your own breath cycles, each inhale a rib of light, each exhale a gentle arch descending into stillness. You step without feet, with awareness through this breathing corridor, and the atmosphere changes, sound softens, time widens. Even the future, usually a skittish animal, draws closer, nose lifted, no longer afraid of your thinking. In the corridor's center, a chamber forms, spherical and clear, an observatory made of attention itself. At the chamber's poles, filaments thread outward into a night field that is not outer space, but inner space, magnified constellations of choices you have not yet made sparkling like neural stars. Each star hums a note. The sum of the notes is you, not the you assembled from stories, but the you that watches stories assemble and dissolve. This is the observer loop revealed, not as a diagram in a book, but as the living physics of your presence. You notice something precise. When your breath shortens, when the urge to fix, to hustle, to force, returns, the chamber walls faintly fog, constellations blur, notes detune. When your breath lengthens steady, kind, unperformed, the chamber clears instantly, and the stars brighten as if relieved. The vision is practical, not abstract. It's a dashboard calibrated to your coherence. You are seeing, without metaphor, how oxygen, heart, rhythm, and attention resolve into a stable signal the field can trust. A second scene overlays the first, a city at night, viewed from above. Streets are capillaries, buildings are cells, lights are mitochondria, and traffic is thought. Before, the city's patterns were frenetic: red brake anxieties, green light urgencies, sirens of scarcity echoing between high rises of expectation. Now, under the cadence of your breath, the city reorganizes. Intersections become roundabouts of patience. Stoplights unlearn panic. Pedestrians move with a strange grace, as if choreographed by an unseen conductor. The city is your body. The city is your life. Coherence is urban planning for consciousness. Return to the chamber. A helix appears at its center, not as DNA illustration but as a living filament, pearled with memories and possibilities. With every measured exhale, the helix untwists a fraction, releasing static from old timelines, arguments rehearsed, outcomes obsessed over, proof demanded at sword point. With every gentle inhale, the helix receives a new instruction, not spoken, not typed, but impressed by rhythm. Stay available to benevolence. Choose the low-friction path. Favor signal over noise. This is DNA restructuring as felt sense, entangling your biology with kinder probabilities. The vision sharpens again, revealing 3 instruments on a pedestal of silence. A metronome of light, pulsing to your respiratory rate. A compass whose needle pivots toward the most coherent choice available now, not tomorrow, not next year now. A key whose teeth are shaped like pauses. You understand them without study. When you breathe with the metronome, your choices lose their moral theater and become directional, the way water chooses downhill without shame. When you follow the compass, you stop negotiating with incoherent options. When you use the key, doors open that were not doors at all, just walls waiting for a pause to reveal their hinge. Around the chamber, glyphs awaken symbols from traditions you've never learned. Equations whose symbols you remember from school but whose meanings have changed under this softer light. One glyph hovers closest, 2 concentric circles linked by a thin bridge. The inner circle is breath. The outer circle is the quantum field. The bridge is witnessing. As your inhale and exhale balance, the bridge brightens. Information flows both ways, from your nervous system to the field, from the field to your nervous system. This is synchronicity explained without argument, bidirectional coherence, morphic resonance made legible. And then, a final panorama. Your timeline unspools like a ribbon across the chamber floor. Knots show where you overthought and tightened the weave. Luminous slack appears where you remembered to breathe. In the slack, options proliferate like spring. You watch, astonished and unsurprised, as certain knots untie themselves the moment you refrain from tugging. Not passivity, permission. The field prefers to collaborate with witnesses who do not bruise the fabric with impatience. The chamber dims, not as an ending but as an integration. The corridor of breath remains, arched and waiting. You have seen the method, not as philosophy, but as mechanics. Breathe as the observer and the geometry of your life rethreads around coherence. Keep the metronome, hold the compass, pocket the key. When you exit, nothing outside has yet changed, and yet everything knows how. What you witnessed as symbols and corridors now wants plain language, not to shrink the mystery, but to remove the unnecessary fog. Begin here. Reality at the smallest scales behaves as a set of probabilities wave, like possibilities, smeared across potential outcomes. Observation does not create matter from nothing. It selects, stabilizes, and entrains one pathway from many, like a musician choosing a key so the orchestra can tune. Your attention, steady or scattered, acts as the key signature. Coherence is the tuning. Consider your observer loop as a feedback circuit. Sensation breath, meaning action sensation. When breath is shallow and hurried, the loop amplifies noise, interpretations fragment, actions become compensations. This is decoherence, probabilities refusing to harmonize, timelines remaining fuzzy. When breath lengthens and evens, vagal tone rises, heart rhythm smooth, cortical chatter quiets. The loop transmits a cleaner carrier wave. In that clarity, improbable opportunities feel less like miracles and more like the behavior of a system relieved of internal friction. The chamber's metronome translates into physiology. A slow, consistent, respiratory cadence nudges heart rate variability into a coherent pattern. That pattern isn't just a health metric, it's a language your nervous system uses to tell your cells, we are safe enough to learn. Learning here means updating prediction models, your brain's maps of what usually happens next. Under coherence, those maps loosen, priors soften. You can perceive options your history once filtered out. In quantum terms, your measurement protocol changes. In spiritual terms, your faith becomes breathable. Now to timeline bifurcation. The phrase sounds dramatic, but you experience it hourly. A bifurcation is a sensitive fork where tiny inputs steer the system toward very different futures. Most people hit the fork already tilted by panic or momentum, so the system tumbles into the same rut. Breath, as the observer, inserts a micropause, a hinge right at the fork. In that hinge, your compass spins freely and points toward the lowest entropy path, the choice that requires the least self-violence to sustain. Follow it, and probability collapses along a gentler gradient. Ignore it, and the wave reverts to old grooves, not as punishment, but as physics honoring the strongest pattern available. Morphic resonance gives this personal physics a collective dimension. Patterns with enough repetition become easier to repeat, not just for you, but for anyone tuned to similar frequencies. When you stabilize coherence, you slightly raise the probability that others around you will find the same rhythm. This is not metaphysical flattery, it's how social nervous systems synchronize. Entanglement is the poetic cousin. Bonds formed through intense shared states can persist beyond distance, so your steadiness can relieve someone you love without a word. The way two tuned guitars share a note across a room. What about the helix responding to breath? Think of DNA less as an inflexible script and more as a library with multiple editions. Epigenetic markers decide which chapters are read loudest under current conditions. Coherence alters those conditions: hormonal, milieu, inflammatory tone, electrical gradients, so the librarian reaches for kinder chapters. DNA restructuring in this transmission means rebalancing, which instructions your biology foregrounds when your observer loop is no longer screaming. The sacred meets the practical, devotion expressed as oxygen allocation. Synchronicity, then, is not superstition but systems theory wearing a halo. When internal variables settle into stable attractors, your cadence, your values, your chosen baseline external variables begin to line up with fewer collisions. You notice meaningful coincidences because you finally stand still long enough to see the river choose you back. The city map vision was telling you this. Traffic calms when signals align. Life calms when breath and attention stop contradicting each other. And the key, shaped like pauses, it is permission to measure less often. Overthinking is compulsive measurement, checking the cake every minute so it never rises. Each check collapses and perturbs the wave, forcing the system to restabilize from scratch. Breath extends the interval between measurements, giving emergence a chance to finish its sentence. Patience here is not delay, it's continuous respect for the dynamics you invited. So the method, rendered plainly: establish respiratory coherence, allow the heart to entrain the brain, let attention inherit that order, measure reality less, witness it more. At bifurcations, choose the path that your body can exhale into, act from there without performance. Repeat until your baseline shifts from effort to availability. This is prayer as physics, physics as prayer. You might ask, how will I know it's working? You will know because urgency loses its bark while precision keeps its teeth. Because the same problems begin to arrive smaller, softer, more soluble. Because your decisions feel like the river chose downhill and you simply agreed. Because the corridor appears in ordinary moments: emails, doorways, goodbyes, and the metronome, compass, and key fit neatly into a single pocket called now. Hold this clarity lightly. We are approaching the mirror, where the personal meets the planetary, and what changes in you will be what the world has been waiting to practice at scale. Keep breathing. The field is listening for the next instruction you are steady enough to receive. What clarifies within you clarifies in miniature the larger organism you inhabit. Humanity is not a crowd of separate minds. It is a nervous system learning itself across 8 billion synapses, firing through culture, commerce, climate, and conversation. When you stabilize breath and attention, you become a coherent neuron in that global brain, and your signal, steady, modest, exact, begins to travel. Others feel it as relief without knowing why, the way a room exhales when someone finally tells the truth. This is the collective mirror, your interior symmetry reflecting outward until the world recognizes its own face. Look at our era with this lens. The symptoms, polarization, speed addiction, algorithmic agitation are expressions of a planetary observer loop, drowning in measurement. Refresh, check, compare, outrage, repeat. It is not evil. It is decoherence amplified by exquisite tools. The field answers in kind. Timelines jitter, institutions stutter, futures refuse to stabilize because the collective hand keeps opening the oven door. Into this, you carry a different cadence, not as rebellion but as remedy. Your steady breath is not small against the scale of crisis. It is the seed pattern of a new attractor state. Consider morphic resonance at civilization's scope. When enough individuals entrain to coherence, a template becomes easier for others to adopt. You have seen it in micro, how one calm person steadies a meeting, how a single compassionate boundary recalibrates an entire family system. Scale it. Cities at peace are not accidents. They are entanglement fields maintained by ordinary people choosing low-friction honesty over high-drama performance. The prophecy names this openly. A cohort of witnesses will learn to breathe as the observer, and their biophysical order will propagate as a cultural technology. Not a slogan, not a doctrine, an atmosphere. You may protest, but the world is on fire. Yes, and phase transitions often arrive with heat. Ice cracks before it melts. Forests seed after they burn. We are living through a bifurcation where obsolete patterns, extraction without reverence, certainty without listening shake themselves to pieces because they cannot sustain the new temperature of awareness. You are not asked to ignore pain. You are asked to metabolize it into signal. Breath is the alchemy by which grief does not rot into cynicism but matures into instructions. Hold the line of coherence where you stand, and the system will find you. Watch how synchronicity scales when you keep the metronome. Movements that never met begin speaking the same sentence. A researcher in one country and a healer in another publish on coherence the same week. Streets meant for traffic become corridors for communion. Policy drafts echo contemplative vows. This is not fantasy. It is what systems do. When a new baseline emerges, they reconfigure around the available order. Your task is not to mastermind the choreography. It is to remain so available to benevolence that your actions fit the larger pattern without strain. DNA restructuring also has a collective expression. When enough bodies exit permanent alarm, our species' biochemical weather shifts. Inflammation lowers, creativity lifts. Fertility of ideas replaces fertility of conflict. The arts no longer perform suffering as proof of depth. They midwife futures as proof of love. Technology stops chasing attention like a hungry animal and starts obeying humane constraints. Markets reward patience because it turns out patience produces better things. None of this is utopia. It is physiology at scale. The quantum field is not moral, but it is exquisitely responsive to the quality of measurement. A coherent civilization measures less to control and more to witness, then acts with precision where the compass points. Notice what this demands of you beyond private serenity. It asks for a public coherence that does not fracture under difference. Breath grants you the tensile strength to remain open while you disagree, to speak without the tremor of conquest, to listen without the collapse of self. In this way, you become a civic instrument. Your presence lowers the cost of truth in rooms that usually cannot afford it. This is leadership without podium, policy without decree, a human being whose nervous system no longer negotiates with incoherence as if it were inevitable. So let the mirror do its work. As you keep rhythm, expect the field to recruit you quietly, precisely into places where your steadiness is needed. A threshold conversation, a failing bridge between teams. A child who believes calm is a myth. You will not fix them. You will inhabit coherence until they remember their own. And when enough of us do this often enough, the aggregate curve of history bends, not by miracle, not by force, but by probability consenting to the simplest path home. Hold that awareness like a lantern cupped from wind. We are approaching the crossroads where the mirror becomes a map, and your breath becomes the hinge on which futures turn. Keep the metronome, keep the compass. The corridor widens now, not just for you, but for us. You feel the atmosphere thicken not as fear, but as charge like air before rain, ions crowding the skin with a promise only honesty can keep. The corridor of breath carries you to a threshold you have approached 1,000 times without naming, the place where your familiar reflex reaches for control and your deeper intelligence reaches for coherence. Here the path splits, almost invisibly, not a dramatic canyon, more like a subtle divergence of lines that will, miles ahead, lead to entirely different continents of consequence. Stand here and look closely. On the left, the road of overthinking gleams with the seduction of immediate certainty. It offers speed, applause, the familiar hum of problem-solving as identity. It is paved with surveillance checking, measuring, refreshing, bargaining, an endless sequence of micro-collapses that force the wave to choose too soon, then choose again, fracturing momentum into jitter. This road is not evil, it is simply expensive. It taxes your biology with constant restabilization, and it taxes your timelines with friction that masquerades as productivity. On the right, the road of the observer seems humbler. No neon, no triumphal arch, only the metronome's pulse and the compass's quiet needle pointing toward the choice your body can exhale into. This path is not passive. It is permissive, the way a door permits entry when you stop shaking the handle and notice that it opens toward you, not away. Here, breath lengthens into belonging. Here, you measure less often, not to abdicate agency, but to allow emergence to keep its promise. This is the bifurcation moment, a phase transition calibrated to your capacity, not your fantasies. You will not be punished for choosing left. You will simply continue rehearsing what you already know. You will not be glorified for choosing right. You will simply become available to the benevolence that was already circling, unable to land in turbulence. Reverence, then, is the correct posture. Reverence for how small a hinge can move such large doors. Let the instruments remind you, the metronome. Settle the oscillation until your heart's variability sings a clear carrier wave through your nerves. The compass. Feel for the lowest entropy option, the one that requires the least self-betrayal to maintain. The key. Insert a pause long enough for the probability cloud to reveal its most merciful shape. While you wait, notice the mind's theater knocking for admission with urgent scripts. Decide now, prove now, fix now. You open the door, offer it a seat, and keep breathing. The play can run without your lead role. Observe how entanglement participates. As you lean toward coherence, people you love feel an unspoken permission to choose gentler roads in their own lives. Not because you argued well, but because your field stopped billing them for your anxiety. Synchronicity accelerates here. The email arrives as you loosen your grip. The mentor calls as you release the outcome. The solution appears the moment you stop interrogating the problem and start hosting it with oxygen. These are not bribes from the universe. They are signatures of a system rediscovering the mathematics of ease. You may still feel grief as you turn right, and that is natural. There is a certain glamour in the left-hand path, the heroism of strain, the romance of the almost. Thank it for its lessons. It taught you stamina, pattern recognition, the circuitry of effort. But now, effort must become artistry. Your breath is the brush, attention, the pigment, coherence, the canvas. Paint the next stroke with the lightest wrist you can manage while remaining true. This is not a test, it is a rehearsal for a life that no longer burns itself to feel alive. Pause and listen. The city inside you, streets, cells, signals, has quieted to hear your choice. Even your DNA waits at the balcony, helix gleaming like a coiled audience. You do not owe the past a repeat performance. You owe the future a stable witness. Inhale to gather your strength from all the timelines where you over-explained yourself. Exhale to sign the peace treaty with this moment as it actually is. The corridor brightens, the chamber clears, the compass settles 1 degree to the right. Step. Nothing explodes. Angels do not trumpet. The difference is subtler and more sovereign. Your shoulders drop by a breath's width. The knot behind your heart loosens by a thought. The next action presents itself without fireworks, just fit. You take it. The field nods without spectacle and moves to meet you 3 steps in return. This is how bifurcations bless, not with thunder, but with alignment that holds. Remember this feeling. You will return to this fork again and again, not because you failed, but because this is how mastery is forged, choice by choice, cadence by cadence, until the right-hand road becomes not a decision but a default. Keep the metronome in your pocket, keep the compass in your palm, keep the key at the ready. The corridor narrows into stillness now, inviting you into the hush where integration begins. You've stepped. Now the work becomes exquisitely ordinary, sacred not because it is rare, but because it is repeated. Integration is devotion measured in minutes, and minutes are where timelines decide who you are. Begin with mornings. Before you feed the mind any names, feed the body oxygen. 3 unhurried cycles. Inhale for a slow count of 5, pause for 2, exhale for 7, pause for 2. This is not superstition, it is calibration. You're teaching your observer loop its first responsibility. Establish coherence before contact. Emails, news, and narratives can wait their turn. The quantum field listens first to your baseline. Carry this cadence into movement. As you walk, imagine your skeleton as a tuning fork and the ground as an instrument resonating back. Let each footfall be a metronome, click that your heart can hear. The city reorganizes because you do. When conversation finds you, remain aware of the key you chose. Notice how coherence turns listening into architecture rooms where honesty fits without scraping its knuckles. Speak less quickly than the impulse that wants to prove. This slows measurement, allows meaning to condense, and prevents the wave from collapsing into arguments you no longer need to win. Food becomes an ally. Before the first bite, 1 breath of acknowledgement. I receive this as light arranged as matter. Digestion is chemistry, yes, and chemistry is influenced by state. You are not moralizing. You are collaborating with the biophysics of absorption. Water becomes a sacrament when you remember that its geometry reflects your field. Drink as if you were polishing the mirror you intend to see truth in. When anxiety knocks, and it will, clever and punctual, do not fight the visitor. Escort it to the corridor. Offer it the metronome and ask it to breathe with you. Anxiety is measurement attempting to keep you safe by constant checking. Reassign it. We measure less frequently now and more meaningfully. Set a practice interval, 30 minutes of witnessing, then 1 minute of review. In that review, consult the compass. Which choice today is the lowest entropy path, the option your body can exhale into without contortion? Choose it. Then stop shopping for second opinions in the marketplace of doubt. Your technology can be recruited into service. Disable notifications that arrive like pebbles thrown at still water. Protect the silence phase with settings and boundaries so that your nervous system trusts you to keep its sanctuary. When you must enter the loud world, go as a lighthouse. Steady beam, slow rotation. People will orient without you shouting. This is integration as public utility. Integrate through touchpoints. Doorways become cues. Each threshold invites 1 breath of re-entry. Mirrors become altars, not for hunting flaws, but for recognizing the witness behind the face. Payments become signatures. Every spend is a vote for a timeline. Invest where your exhale deepens. Work becomes craft. Reduce performative urgency. Increase precision born of presence. Replace how fast with how true. Replace how much with how coherent. Relationships are laboratories for resonance. Coherence does not mean perpetual agreement. It means honoring the rhythm that allows truth to be exchanged without collateral damage. When conflict arises, remember the key shaped like pauses. Insert it. Let the amygdala finish its sentence in private. Then ask, softly, what is the kindest coherent boundary here? Boundaries that emerge from coherence are less fences and more membranes, permeable enough for love, strong enough for integrity. Evenings are for remembering. Review the day, not as a prosecutor but as a cartographer. Where did breath hold? Where did it lengthen? Where did synchronicity wink? Record 3 instances where the field collaborated the moment you stopped forcing. This is morphic literacy, training your attention to recognize the grammar of grace. End with gratitude, not performative but physiological. Breathe gratitude into the diaphragm until the body believes it. Gratitude stabilizes the attractor you intend to sleep inside. Sleep is not an off switch, it is a relay. Before you surrender, present the helix with a simple instruction. Prioritize repair, learning, and kinder priors. Then trust biology to converse with starched sheets of probability while you release control. Dreams may carry symbols from the chamber, metronomes, compasses, keys. Treat them as reminders, not riddles you must solve at dawn. Integration favors gentle repetition over heroic decoding. And when you forget, and you will return without drama, the corridor has no door that locks behind you. A single measured breath is legal tender in this economy. Inhale, I am the witness. Exhale, reality entrains to coherence. This is not a mantra to hypnotize yourself. It is a declaration of operating system. Keep it simple, keep it sacred, keep it scheduled enough to become automatic and alive enough to remain love. You are not building a cage of practices, you are cultivating a climate. In that climate, probability behaves. In that climate, DNA listens. In that climate, the city inside you glows at night like a constellation that knows its name. Keep walking. The silence is approaching, not as absence, but as the richest presence you've yet allowed. We arrive where language loosens its grip and the corridor widens into hush. Not absence, presence clarified. The instrument of breath continues, softer now, like a tide you don't have to watch to trust. In this clearing, you're invited to let the mind lower its tools to the floor. No polishing of meaning, no architecture of conclusions, only the dignified quiet of a witness who has nothing left to defend. Listen, the room has a pulse. Walls inhale a little when you do, exhale when you do not. Even the light settles into a slower frame rate, as if the projector has agreed to stop proving the film is real. This is not a trance. It is precision, without motion. The quantum field, relieved of your constant measuring, expands toward you the way night expands around a single candle. No argument, only allowance. You have been speaking to the field since you were born. Now you let it answer in its native tongue, silence. Notice what remains when narrative idles. The diaphragm moves by itself, expert and ancient. The heart writes cursive across your ribs, loops and arcs confident enough to be unnoticed. The helix holds vigil in your cells, antennae just high enough to catch the finer weather. Across this stillness, a few gentle currents travel. A cool ribbon crossing your upper lip as breath leaves. A warm weight behind the sternum where presence pools. A faint shimmer at the nape, as if old vigilance were finally asking to be retired. Let it retire. Let the sentry put down the spear and join the village it thought it had to guard alone. In the quiet, images visit without demanding interpretation. The metronome becomes a distant lighthouse, its beams sweeping a black sea at intervals that comfort the horizon. The compass rests on your palm, needle untroubled because there is nowhere to go that isn't now. The key sleeps in your pocket, teeth cool against your thigh, reminding you that every door you force was always hinged toward you. Thoughts still appear, of course. They drift like boats crossing the bay at dusk, names, plans, an old bruise rehearsing its speech. You give them harborage without docking papers and watch them depart by the same current. No boat stays because the harbor isn't a possession, it's a condition. The witness doesn't confiscate, it hosts. Feel how coherence grows louder in the absence of effort. Heart rhythms braid themselves into a soft rope you can lean on. The city inside you dims extraneous signage. Intersections prefer roundabouts of patience to sirens of urgency. In this unlit district, your senses refine. A clock 2 rooms away, a leaf arguing with gravity outside the window, the body's entire cathedral creaking very slightly as it settles into trust. Silence reveals the geometry of your observer loop. the way low tide reveals a coastline. You see the sandbars of habit, the coves of tenderness, the narrow straits where panic used to sprint at the first scent of uncertainty. And because you are not measuring, the water doesn't collapse into one anxious route. It simply laps, mapping an older intelligence. Approach, touch, withdraw, return coherence as tide. If prayer wants a name here, it is this. I agree to be reachable. No spells, no bargains. Reachable. By goodness. By instruction. By the next merciful measurement that asks to be made when the cake is ready, not every minute before. In the reachable body, epigenetic librarians reshelve the loudest, oldest books and make room for chapters written in the simple ink of oxygen. Repair, learn, soften, choose gently. Let the silence speak in patterns you can carry back. 4 small noticings. The inhale that lifts without ambition. The micropause that bows without fear. The exhale that empties without performance. The landing that needs no applause. Repeat them until they repeat you. This is how the witness becomes climate instead of event. Somewhere within the hush, a subtle click, a knot loosens that you didn't even tie. A memory unhooks from the story it was hired to prove. An obligation that never matched your shape walks itself to the door, thanks you for the shelter, and leaves. Nothing dramatic, just room. The field answers with its own courtesy. A nearby sound aligns with your breath. A distant thought aligns with your heart. A decision you were postponing aligns with your spine. Synchronicity, in the silence phase, doesn't flash, it arranges. Books open to the right page without spectacle. A message arrives with the subject line you would have written if you still needed to push. You nod, because of course, the river prefers downhill. The witness has finally stopped building dams out of second guesses. Stay a moment longer than comfort requests. On the other side of that extra minute, a sweetness gathers that you cannot buy with argument. The sweetness is not reward, it is baseline. You are tasting the pressure your life exerts when you stop pressing back. This is what the prophecy meant by breathing as the observer. Not a task, but a tempo. Not silence as escape, but silence as engineering. When you rise, rise slowly, as if carrying water to the next room. Keep the surface unbroken. Let the corridor of breath reappear, arches bright, floor warm with your own returning footsteps. You will speak again soon. You will act again soon. But the words will be shaped by hush, and the deeds will move like tide, inevitable, exact, and kind. The hush has done its work. You feel it as a density of permission in the chest. A ripeness that asks not for another explanation but for an agreeing breath. This is the turn activation, not as fireworks, but as the clean handover from theory to embodiment. You are not preparing to become the prophecy, you are discovering that you have been its instrument waiting to be tuned. Begin with the simplest possible action, carried by the fullest possible coherence. Let the metronome resume 5 in, 2 held, 7 out, 2 held, until the heart's rope tightens kindly. As it does, lift your attention like a lantern and illuminate one small choice waiting in the near field of now. Not the life plan, not the 10-year arc. One choice. Ask the compass, which option lets my exhale deepen? Feel the needle settle toward the path of least self-betrayal. Step there. The step is the activation. You will notice the field negotiating around you to accommodate this fidelity. A call returns earlier than the calendar predicted. A task that resisted you for weeks dissolves under 20 minutes of unhurried presence. The city inside you brightens its intersections to green without hurry because you are not sprinting through red. Synchronicity increases its resolution from broad coincidences to precise alignments. The phrase you needed, the person you forgot to ask, the door that was a wall until you set the key of pause into its quiet hinge. Activation is measurable, not because you obsess over measurement again, but because the body reports. Shoulders descend a fraction, jaw unhooks, eyes widen without strain. The diaphragm's arc grows generous. In this physiology, epigenetic librarians reshelve panic and pull down volumes on repair, learning, and joy. This is DNA restructuring as logistics, resources route to growth instead of defense. You are not merely calm, you are redistributed. Now let entanglement assist. Name, in your silent heart, One person woven into your life's present thread. Without messaging them, breathe coherence toward the space you share. Not advice, not fixing, only the stable signal of, I am reachable to goodness. In the subtle relay that follows, you may receive their steadiness in return, or the sudden clarity to set the kind boundary you both needed. Either way, probability tilts toward mercy. There may still be noise at the edges, thoughts auditioning for the lead role, old narratives promising authority if you let them drive. Offer them the balcony, let them watch. Then, make a second small choice from the same compass. Activation becomes a cadence of fit. Inhale to gather presence, pause to honor the hinge, exhale to sign the decision, pause to feel the world adjust. Repeat until confidence stops needing adjectives. You are not leaving practicality behind. You are reclaiming it. Draft the email with fewer words and more truth. Schedule the conversation you postponed because you feared the tremor in your voice. Let the tremor be an instrument. Rearrange your workspace so the urgent can no longer impersonate the important. Place water within reach. Place phone beyond reach. Replace the to-do list's theater with 3 coherent actions you can actually bless with breath. Completion is not conquest. It is closure, the seam where energy returns to circulation. Notice how the chamber imagery accompanies you into errands and thresholds. The corridor of breath arches over a grocery aisle. The metronome glows faintly on your dashboard at a red light. The compass warms in your palm before you answer a question that once baited you into argument. Even the key reveals new uses. You insert a pause into a meeting and truth, grateful for a doorway, walks in wearing no disguise. People call this leadership. You recognize it as oxygen. Given a job, the collective responds. Strangers mirror your cadence without knowing. Rooms that once spiked your cortisol now accommodate your rhythm as if it were the original tempo. You have become, quietly, a tuning environment. This is not personal glory, it is public service rendered by a regulated nervous system. The prophecy moves through you as weather moves through a harbor. Vessels enter and leave safer than they arrived. Now, acknowledge the part of you waiting for the grand sign, the sky-sized advertisement that says, you did it. Smile and offer it what is truer. The sign is that you no longer require signs to behave with integrity. The miracle is that ordinary actions have regained their sacred weight. The proof is that urgency has lost its bark, while precision keeps its teeth. Seal this phase with a single sentence breathed into the body, not shouted into the world. I am the witness through whom this kinder timeline prefers to occur. Feel the sentence land in bones and fascia, in helix and heartbeat, until the city answers with a subtle dimming of unnecessary lights. Then take the next coherent step, and the next, until motion itself feels like listening. Activation is this. You live as the prophecy you once tried to chase. Not louder, clearer, not harder, truer. The corridor does not end. It continues into a horizon that keeps agreeing to meet you halfway. Keep walking. The seal approaches. You have walked the corridor, held the metronome, trusted the compass, and learned the quiet mercy of the key. What began as a shimmer has become your climate. Breath no longer argues with the moment, it blesses it. Attention no longer interrogates reality, it listens until reality remembers how to be kind. This is the seal, not a stamp from outside, but the inward click when witness and world slip into the same gear. Stand here a final time and feel the lineage in your lungs. Ancestors who prayed without the word quantum and physicists who measured without the word prayer have met inside your chest and agreed. Coherence is devotion in motion. The helix at your core has taken notes from your constancy. It now requests fewer alarms and more light. The city inside you keeps its own curfew of calm. Even your shadow, once employed as a saboteur, has accepted a gentler job, guardian of boundaries, keeper of gates. Let the seal be spoken through the body. Inhale and gather every timeline in which you tried to earn worth by exhausting yourself. Exhale and release the oath that said urgency is the only proof of care. Inhale and welcome the futures that arrive when you measure less and witness more. Exhale and sign your name to the present where you can finally live. There will be days when noise returns, when the left-hand road flashes its familiar glamour. You are not required to be flawless. You are invited to be faithful. Faithful to the pause that precedes wisdom. Faithful to the breath that precedes coherence. Faithful to the smallest action your exhale can love. If you forget, you already know the way back. One measured cycle, and the corridor rebuilds itself around your willingness. Now, turn outward with a soft gaze. The collective is not waiting for a louder argument. It is waiting for steadier hearts. You will carry this seal into rooms that cannot afford more theater, and into moments where honesty needs a lower price to be spoken. You will not convert. You will entrain. You will not perform. You will host. And because probabilities adore the path of least resistance, goodness will keep choosing you as its easiest road. The prophecy, then, is simple enough to memorize and large enough to house a life. Breathe as the observer. Measure sparingly. Choose the lowest entropy kindness available now. Act without performance. Repeat until reality prefers your cadence. Hold the metronome as a memory, the compass as a reflex, the key as a birthright. If anyone asks what changed, you will not need a sermon. Your presence will answer with the geometry of ease. Listen, the field is quiet, which is how it says yes. The prophecy has been spoken. Let it unfold through you.